Welcome to the podcast Rise and Play. I am Sophie Vaux, your podcast host. I bring together leaders, entrepreneurs, fund makers, investors, and educators who are here to make a change in the industry for a brighter and healthier future of the games we will make and how we will make them. We're here to start a conversation because listening and asking the hard questions is sometimes enough to inspire change in us, to take the leap too. Let's begin. Today, I'm very excited to have with me Benjamin Chevalier from Mighty Bear Games. So a bit of background about Ben. Ben started almost 20 years ago at Ubisoft Montpellier as an artist, then joined Gameloft, LucasArts, and King, and did some teaching as well, and co-founded 2 studios. Ben spent most of his career doing art direction, building and leading teams of anywhere from 3 to 100 people. With Simon, his co-founder, they started Mighty Bear Games in early 2017 with ex-King colleagues and grew the studio up to 50 people team members and after 2 rounds of funding. At Mighty Bear Games, Ben overviews both the art and the growth teams, focusing a lot on building best practices, developing leadership on the art side, as well as developing and executing our product marketing strategy. So hi Ben, really happy to have you here. How are you today?
Hey Sophie, very, very happy to be here. I'm super honored to be invited on your podcast. I'm doing well, thanks.
Yeah, me as well. I know we have had a lot of discussion actually, well, not recorded for the year and especially during pandemic and exchanging practices about leadership. So I'm really excited as well that we can share a bit of the highlights of our conversation to also the audience with the podcast. So I have my first question about Mighty Bear Games because when I also was reading your bio and going through the companies you've been in and the experience you have been in big companies, big position. You also had experience co-founding studios. So what led you to open Mighty Bear Games as well in Asia? Can you walk us through, from this whole path to the genesis of Mighty Bear Games?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you go back in time, so when I started, I started as a environment artist, more specifically at Ubisoft Montpellier at the time, and I spent about 4 to 5 years there. I got really tired of production at the time without exactly knowing why. I was like, I feel like this is maybe not for me. I was doing pretty okay in terms of my output, but just like personally, I didn't feel very well, and I switched to teaching for a while. Went back into the industry a little bit. Worked in Gameloft as well. Decided to go out of the industry again to teach. That was in Malaysia at the time. Gameloft was in Vietnam, and I joined LucasArts. And LucasArts was my first, I think, experience with an American company. I was like, oh, so things are kind of run differently here. It's a different type of company culture. It's kind of the first time I really understood a little bit what a company culture could be. And later on, joining King, I realized also, wow, another way, to run a company and to take care of your employees and to build teams and to build ownership. And it's a Nordic company, so they have there is a big emphasis on the culture of the company. And so Mighty Bear Games itself, all of us who started Mighty Bear Games, we were 8 people initially. All of us were part of the same team at King. King got acquired by Activision Blizzard, and we were offered an option to either stay within the company and move back to Europe, or stay in Singapore. And it just felt like, to us, first, we liked working together. We liked being in Singapore, and it was a great timing. So it was kind of a leap of faith, but there was also a lot of trust within the team, working with people that we've known for a year, and it just felt like an amazing opportunity. And all of us felt like, let's just continue working together. Let's just continue, building titles that we believe in, and essentially being in charge of, this time, the culture that we want to build, because each company had very, very different ways to do things. And we felt like we could do our own, essentially, and build something that we feel is better for us. And I think, like, for me personally, I can't talk about the rest of the team really, but for myself, I think it's really a reaction to work cultures that I was just not very happy with. An opportunity to build something together better. And we happen to be passionate about games, but it's more like, I like the people I'm working with. I like the relationship that we have as a team. let's continue that. Let's continue building on this. That's how we started.
Mhm. And about starting your own company, because also I'm asking this as sometimes I play with the thought as well, of course, of starting a own company studio in the past. There are a lot of, when you are in very stable, secure companies, you have always this maybe illusion, I don't know, of safety net, but you do have this safety net. And what were the fears, if you had any, before starting your own company? What went well in the end, or what was still a true challenge, when starting with your own company?
Right. So that's a good question. I would agree when working in a large company. So it really changed for me, and I'll explain why. I used to think as well and feel like there is a certain safety there, but through my experience working at King and LucasArts, both of them, which were fairly large company, closed down. The studios were doing well, but they got acquired. And when they were acquired, so in the case of LucasArts, Disney decided that we have a game studio back in the US. We don't really need a game studio here. It takes a lot of effort to also realign the strategy, and it's like a lot of like business related reasons to not continue the studio here. And so they closed the branch. And same thing for King in Singapore. They felt like let's bring people back to Europe to ensure again like better alignment, being in the same time zone that really helps communication. It's like a lot of things that make sense, but this idea of sort of safety of being in a large company like multiple times got completely shattered for me, and I felt like, what do I prefer? Do I prefer to be in a large company where I have no idea what people are doing and how these companies really being run in the end, because we just see the end result, like the decision that is being made that affects us all? Or do I prefer to work in a place where I have full visibility on the runway that we have with the company? And I actually feel right now much safer, and I've always felt much safer working in a smaller structure that is very transparent about how we're doing, because I understand exactly what amount of risk I am taking. People understand how not, the amount of risk that they're taking themselves. And so far sometimes it's been hard, right? Like you don't always have a comfortable runway. It's not always the case. But with Mighty Bear Games, so far we've been pretty, I wouldn't say lucky, because it's probably just hard work, and Simon has been really, really good at building relationships, bringing investors, making sure that we have that runway that is always there. So it's all in all, for me, it's just been much better. I sleep much better at night running my own studio and than being in a large company right now. Moreover, because also the people who work with me chose me, and I choose the people I work with. So there's like this sense of, I don't feel like I did not always feel great in larger companies where I was not really choosing the people I was working with, and likewise on the other side. So yeah, overall, it's been pretty great for me.
And what you point out actually is this false sense of security, but
Mm.
actually it comes down to also the sense of autonomy and control, right? So when you go on your own, maybe you have bigger challenges, things to deal with, but at least you know what's happening. And I think it's an important point when you weigh the pros and cons of going for your own company. Do you want to own sort of your destiny fully, or then let it in the hands of others, and then actually doesn't work for everybody, right?
Yeah, yeah, and you just pointed on something very important to me, which I hate. I remember hating when I was working in larger structures to sort of blame other people for things that were happening. Like now, I can only blame myself
Mm.
ultimately, and I really prefer that. I felt bad feeling that way before. So yeah, absolutely, like being in control. All right. Yeah.
Yeah. And I wanted to ask more. So, first part of the question is where does the name come from? So, I'm a bit curious. I don't even know myself, so I take the chance to ask this. And second part of the question is like, how did you end up doing games that are actually not that close to what you've been doing, at King, like free to play, casual, etc. And you are more known for today games like Butter Royale and Apple Arcade.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So the name itself, I think it's going to sound a little bit. It's not underwhelming, but it's essentially Simon used to be called Papa Bear. That's his nickname. And we're like, what are we? And then we're like, of course, we had a lot of horrendous ideas and stuff that just was not really nice. But we ended up with Mighty Bear, and well, Mighty Bear game sounds kind of okay, right? It's kind of nice, and it's just sticked. It's the kind of things where it's not coming from something particularly deep. It's just like it's a nice name. Everyone kind of liked it. We had a few options, but it was nice to settle on that. Everyone was comfortable with that essentially on the team initially. There were only a few things that we decided very early. It was like our values and principles and the name of the studio. That was all before we even incorporated the company. So that's where it came from. Essentially, Simon's nickname was the driving thing. And in terms of the games that we make, and how we're visible for Butter Royale, and how we went from free to play to more subscription based type of titles. We actually started with free to play titles, and we still consider ourselves as a mobile game or cross platform actually game company at the moment. We had an opportunity with Apple at some point where they asked us, like, look, we have a new platform that we're building a subscription platform, and we're looking for good content. We're looking for teams, that are going to be able to deliver great experiences. And we pitched them multiple projects. They actually picked two of them, and we said we don't have enough people to make two of them, so we'll have to do one. And it was Butter Royale. And so the transition actually from free to play to subscription based was fairly painless, because you go from a place where you need in free to play generally to validate your metrics before you can invest more into your project. You have to be very, very iterative. It's it's an entire process around making free to play titles, where you go back to something that's a little bit more like a sort of a premium experience. And all of us, I think, on the team have previous console and PC experience, like premium, like could say premium titles or AAA titles, if you like. And so that was fairly painless to go and work on something where you know what you're going to make, the amount of time, the quality that you're aiming for, you have budgets that are set, and you just focus on delivering the best possible experience. We are actually working on free-to-play titles at the moment.
Okay, exciting. Well, we'll talk more about it a bit later. And about games, what is your personal relationship to games? So it's very clear, of
Mm-hmm.
course, like your whole career is around games, but I'm always curious about how it becomes a vocation for people. So what is your personal relationship to games? Why is it so much part of your life now?
So I think so. Well, it's the same thing with me. For like my career, or the reason, the why, and everything is it really started by chance. Like I was interested in, I wanted to be a engineer initially, and my math was not good enough for that. And then I was like, I like web design, so I learned more about JavaScript and HTML and all these things, and I started designing with this. And at the same time, I was just drawing on the side. And Ubisoft, which had a studio in Montpellier, was hiring at the time. And a person I knew just mentioned that to me, and she was telling me like, hey, you got to go and you got to show your portfolio and tell them. And luckily for me, at the time, the art director was looking for junior, for people who had actually no idea what they were doing and who they could mentor and coach and bring on board to work with them. And that's how I got started in games. I love games. I was playing games, but I never imagined in my life that I could actually work there. It's so it's been really by chance, and I stayed since then, because I found, I think, a place where, of course, I work on products that I love myself. I consume a lot, and that has been really formative in my life. I've been playing console games. I've been playing PC games a lot, and I think now I found also a place where making games, I went from being purely about production, like developing my craft, to now I'm developing more my leadership skills, building teams, building processes. And I feel like it's a never ending, whichever way, right? Whether I go into more like a leadership type of development or more focused on my skills as like a craft, it's an endless process. Once you discover that, like, there is always something next, there is always the next stage, it's something new to learn and to apply. It's just, if you're passionate about this, you're just going to keep finding things to learn. So it has this sense of, I'm working on products that when I was younger made me kind of, it was my escape. I was playing, like, I don't know, DuckTales, or I was playing Ninja Turtles or whatever, on my NES. That was my first console to, actually working on these things and working with companies like LucasArts at the time. I was like, oh, Monkey Island Company, this is amazing. So I love this. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I think also for most of us as well, although we like games a lot, never thought it would be such a big career today. So I think in this generation and age, we're all like, wow, that's awesome. But that's more of a luck and opportunity. That's something all planned out.
Yeah, exactly. I would say so. Especially at the time, there was no, you couldn't study making games or anything like this. You would just have to be sort of somehow, joining at the right moment. I was lucky. I was really a good timing.
And so a bit further now about personal values and company culture. So let's start first with you and your
Mhm.
personal values in work and life. And what are they? And how do they somehow reflect in the company you created?
Right. This is super interesting. So I think you could say in my case, it's kind of like I think I started really thinking about my own values when I started thinking about what I wanted to build as a company, as a place. It's not like I have such strong values that I understand myself, and this is what I'm going to do as a company. The work on understanding these, like what do I care about deeply, what makes me tick, what makes me a better person, what makes me a better friend, better husband, better whatever, right? That came actually from me working, being a better leader, being a better team member, being a better person in my team. That triggered a lot of this sort of introspection. But I can tell, like personally, my personal values now, I can talk about them a little bit. Being honest and transparent with people is something that is important to me. I have a complex family background where I was kind of always torn apart between people and telling different stories to different people, not being able to be honest. And I had to sort of separate myself from that at some point, and it was liberating. And I feel like omitting things or obfuscating things, being political in a way, right, within your own family, felt really bad to me. And the same thing in the workplace. I feel like I need trust, I need openness, I need authenticity from people so that I can function well. If not, I just feel bad. I just feel really bad. And same in my life. So I think, yeah, transparency, trust, that's really important to me. And that's something that we actively practice in the studio. Same thing with maybe doing things like a sort of bias for action. I'm not super patient, so it's okay if I do embarrassing stuff. So I'm going to release something that's not really completely there, but I'm like I need to learn from it. I need to see it. I need people to experience that and then understand better how I can improve on it. And same thing with the studio. We have a tendency to be a little bit fast with releasing content, even if it's not always perfect. We have so much to learn from it, and I think it's okay to just release stuff that you're not completely 100% like happy with, And I think just getting yourself, that's again something that I realized slowly. I think I need to have the right people around me, people that will make me again, be a sort of mirror to myself, reflection, that will make me a better person, make me think, make me question myself. And it's the same, I think, within the studio right now. We call that in the studio, we call that hiring upwards, which is we want to hire people that are better than us. There is no, it's just I want to be around people who are going to challenge me, and it's the same thing in life. It's what makes you again like improve as a person. I can't really separate, really be honest, like the experience I have personally with my friends and also the experience I can have in the studio as well. Like people will just make me think, they will literally just like I'll pause and be like, I've been doing some things, for a long time a certain way, and I realize like maybe that's not the best way to do that. And it's not, it's not always my friends. It can be people that I talk to the studio. Thanks again, like thanks to this, I'll say that very diverse team and very different perspectives. Like there are things that I never considered before I met some people at the studio. So it's like, yeah, I feel this is very aligned with my own values. But again, like this is kind of like I'm looking at it from the opposite directions. Like I started working on these things with the studio because there was a need for me to understand what mattered to me and what mattered to the rest of the team. And then I realized, well, I mean, that's the same in my life. Like I have these things, these pillars, kind of a way where that really mattered to me.
Yeah, it's a good point as well. When you start a company, it's kind of forces you to wait a minute. I need to gain clarity on what I'm doing
Yeah,
here, why.
exactly.
And it's a reminder as well, like when we think about culture, because as I was listening to you, the culture is really the reflect of the values of the founders. It's hard to separate them, and either it's accidental, unintentional, so you don't know about them, or it comes like you have managed to verbalize them quite clearly with intention, because it's in all the actions you do and what you say, what you do. It's so much integrated.
Yes, that's true. And when I feel so, to follow up on this, I feel like there are multiple stages to that. Like initially, yes, it's very much founder driven, and you're like, this is the vision that we have, and people are joining in, and
Mhm.
they start adding up to these. But at some point, it's not our vision anymore, and it's better, and it's bigger, and it's something else, and it has to change, and we have to accept that. And
Mhm.
that's where the culture that is established has to bring in people that are going to make the sum better and bigger than just one more person. They will shape up the culture again and again and again. And we have to, I think, not be precious about what we built, and I'll say that, just trying to keep, walking the talk when we say, I want to be transparent, I want to be honest, I want to, be focused on, moving forward. And as you said, like we have to leave that, we have to live by example, right?
Yeah. I can reflect as well on the fact that the culture, of course, grows organically beyond you
Mm.
as a founder. And you have to embrace it. And it's more an expansion than, a complete shift, but accepting because, of course,
Mhm.
with new people, the culture evolves. But the core, of course, remains the same.
Yeah, I think that there's some very fundamental things that we all sort of align on. Yeah.
And as you have like verbalized these values, what is the process you use in your company to, I don't know, communicate it or live by it? You gave few example, but do you have, yeah, a specific process or approach to it to make it more explicit?
Yeah, there are multiple things that we do for that. So one of them, for example, is, of course, we run every single new person joining the team through the values and principles. But before even the people join, at the hiring process itself, we ask people to have a look at our values. Like, do you feel like this is something that represents, a part of what you think? Like, you see yourself in this? How do you see, you know yourself contributing to that? We generally ask people to read a bunch of things. I mean, they have an option, right? If they don't want to read, they don't have to read, but we provide them with content about the company, about who we are and how we function, what we care about. And so that starts with that. So before people even join the team, they're aware of the values that we have there. And of course, for us, it's a test. For a newcomer, they come in, and we want to hear generally from them. How do you feel we're actually living those values? Do you feel like we're aligned with what we say we're doing here? We have a set of success criteria as well, that come in a little bit later. So the success criteria for us is a set of uh, topics that we use to sort of rate the performance of a team member, but from a culture perspective, not from a technical skill set perspective. More, how is the person doing in terms of openness, transparency, in terms of big picture thinking, in terms of innovation, leadership, extra. And we're asking peers to review that for the person and give their input. And generally, this is a way to sort of assess. No, so no one, like, there are 5 levels. No one can really have 5 at all of these topics. Like, people have different strengths and weaknesses, and we have a very open discussion about how people are doing there, and if they agree, if we're aligned on the assessment, and how we can move forward, and what needs to be amplified, and what needs to be worked on. And that's again a way to reinforce the culture that we have, and sort of make sure that it's like top of mind, like technically, like what am I really doing well at, and what do I want to work on. And then of course just leaving the being a representative of that, like embodying, sorry, that culture. So for example, as not just like any team member, we're asking people to be very open about failures. Like, failing publicly is very important. Getting people to see that we're comfortable with making mistakes, we're comfortable with acknowledging them, learning from them, transferring that knowledge back to the team, so others won't make the same mistake. And hopefully creating a sense of safety for people to tell us what they think, give us direct feedback. And again, like, it's all these things that are sort of aligned with the values that we have written about the company. We have to live them. Like we have to have very good one-on-one. We have to listen before we talk. We have to, support people. And I'm not talking from a leadership perspective. I'm really talking from peer, to peer. We have a rule, sort of rule in the studio, which is if someone is blocked by us, whoever we are and whatever we do, that's going to become our priority. We have to help them. We're going to stop as much as we can. We're going to stop what we do. We're going to help them. And one of the few things that we do to ensure that the culture is lived, not just told.
Yeah. And you shared a lot of tools, by the way, that you're using concretely to, not just have
Mm.
nice words or on paper or. So that's good example. And going a bit further as well, like how these values are so core as well in how you do things. Can you share more about how it is reflected in the hiring and firing for you?
Oh yeah, sure. So on the hiring side, as mentioned before, we ask people to read about the culture that we have and prepare. I think we want to create a fair environment. So we know that there are some people that will just go and look for information themselves, and others that will maybe not think about it. It doesn't mean that they're bad or anything. It just means that it didn't occur to them that maybe we have actually, written stuff about the company. And so we're sending them links, and we have a process within with in terms of hiring in the team to sort of assess sort of the culture. I don't really like to say culture fit because that's not exactly what we're looking for. We're looking for something more than culture fit.
Mhm.
But let's say, how is this person doing or would be doing within our culture? And we're trying to remove bias with this process. So we have standardized questions. So it means like we're asking in small groups, diverse groups. So we never have like artists all together asking questions. Someone's like, you have a mix of designer, artist, engineer, QA, all together in a single group asking similar questions to the person going through the interview. And that helps us having a sort of like baseline, context that is the same for everyone. We all asked about how does this person do in different ways, about dealing with conflict, for example, dealing with a difficult team member or a struggling team member, or transparency, radical feedback. Like how do these people do that? And so that really helps us, um, sort of assessing, how well this person would do in the team. And what we're asking as well during the culture interview is that the person prepares questions for us. We'll literally ask them, please, these are the people that you're going to have on the call. Prepare questions, interview us back. Like this is important to us, and it tells us a lot about the person we're talking to when they actually, sort of, I don't know how to say that well, but like roast us a little bit, with hard questions. I'm like, press the team, go ahead, press the team, and see if we're aligned, with what we're saying, and if we're, consistent. And that's been really helpful. We used to not have this sort of process in the hiring to what we call remove the bias that can exist, and we really drastically improved the quality of the people that applied and joined the team.
And then following the question, when you may have had to separate as well from people, do you see as well where coming back to these values, it was a point of decision?
Absolutely. I think the generally it's very rarely down to how a person performs in terms of technical abilities or hard skills, right? Like usually hard skills are fairly straightforward to assess and discuss, or we can even like work around. Maybe the role has changed, maybe the responsibilities, the requirements have changed. Can we work around that? And often we can actually. Culture is
Mhm.
really the part where you feel like, okay, we're having a misalignment here. There is a disconnect. Where these are the things that we really value in the team, and these are the places where we need to see a change. And if it doesn't happen, we work on that together, right? We're not just telling people like this is not working, goodbye. Like we always have had a period of time where we're trying to find this alignment and work together. But yes, we do use definitely the set of values that we have to sort of generally like mutually agree on like this is not working. Like this in the end, often this is the reason it's not working. It's purely because we care about these things, we care about different things. We're not able to offer such and such to the person, and maybe that's what we should do is just part ways.
Yeah. And from personal experience, It hardly changes over time, although you want to give it a shot. But it's so core to yourself as well. Like if you're not aligned in how you approach, I don't know, work and life philosophy, it's really hard to turn this around.
That is true. Yeah, I would agree with that.
And switching gears a bit more on diversity, because also you mentioned
Mhm.
diverse teams, and I know as well, like a bit more about your team, but the audience doesn't. You are so in Singapore is also like a big crossroad of Asia, and I'm pretty sure as well for people coming from Europe or North America could be interesting as well. So, what's the composition, of your company now? Nationalities, like to hear more as well. This cultural mix that is very unique as well to your studio.
Correct. Yes, it's pretty. It's pretty unique. So we have, well, maybe for a bit of context about Singapore, you as you explained, it's a bit unique. Singapore itself has three, say, ethnicities here. You have Singaporean, Chinese Singaporean, you have Malay Singaporean, and Indian Singaporean. And of course, all around the region, you have Indonesia, Vietnam, Thailand. You can go as far as even like if you consider the entire APAC region, you can go as far as like New Zealand and Australia. If you go south, it's Singapore is a hub, so you have a lot of different people. It's very cosmopolitan, and I think our team sort of probably reflects some of that. And right now on the team, we have about maybe more now, about 12 nationalities from around the region, from Europe. So again, we have like people from, of course, Singapore, Indonesia, people from India. We have people from further away, so Norway, Ukraine, UK, England, France. So yeah, it's a pretty diverse team in terms of nationalities. And at the moment, I could talk about the since we're talking about diversity and inclusion, the gender ratio on the team at the moment is about 40-60. So we have 40%. I think we're actually, with the latest hires that we just did, I think we have we're doing even a little bit better. So we're not done. Like we're not like, yeah, just, but we're fairly happy with the number here. So 40% female team members and 60% male.
Yeah, my second part of the question was as well like, how does this work all together? And maybe to elaborate more on this part, you both co-founders are from Europe, and maybe with a culture of king, and I would assume that the majority as well is Asian in your team, so quite different culture and probably also the Asian companies. So maybe you can walk us through a bit like the early challenges you had maybe in integrating this your style of leadership and maybe now the journey of how it's incorporated.
Absolutely. So we're actually three co-founders. There is Simon, who's from the UK, Fadzuli, who's Singaporean, and myself, French.
Mhm.
And we so how we sort of approach keeping the building a diverse team and keeping it, diverse. So I mentioned a little bit about the hiring process. So really, I'm starting at the very very beginning of things. We try to eliminate bias as much as we can with our process around standardized questions and sort of multi-layered cultural interviews. Once people join, I think generally and that's part of the culture that we're building and trying to get people to feel comfortable with this. And I'll explain why that helps with the challenge that we have. We have very regular one-on-one. It's like probably one of the most important tool that we use. Getting I think it's called Team Pulse, which is essentially making sure how people are doing in the team in general, like feel comfortable, happy, not happy, issues that they want to raise, and you can do that like fairly often. So you can get a sense like if anyone is not doing well for any reason, right? It doesn't have to be about diversity related issues, but we'll usually know very early. And then we do every, I think, quarter or some around there, team-wide surveys really to understand how well we do in terms of how we live our values, which include diversity. And so again, like more opportunities for people to raise any kind of issues or just say if they're happy as well, which we're happy when that happens. And in terms of bringing a diverse team on board and attracting a diverse group of people, I think we're just making sure that the decision makers are as diverse as possible within the team. We have what we call a steering group, which is it's a bunch of people who are essentially driving maybe more shaping up the company maybe more than anyone else. We are trying to make our team members really visible with, writing articles, going to maybe participating in podcasts as well, going to, events, extra. And moreover, I
Mhm.
think that's one of the ways people discover about Mighty Bear Games. We're trying to make sure that our games, our products themselves represent the diversity of the team in a way. Butter Royale is, again, has a lot of very different characters. People find representation in Butter Royale, and we've had, families writing to us saying like, wow, they're characters for the whole family. We've had people writing to us as well in terms of, like, we have a cast of characters where just people felt like, well, I can find something for myself, and every single person around me that plays the game with me can find something for themselves as well. And that's really great to hear. And I think the diversity that we have in the game is, again, is a product of what the team is. And, to go back to the challenge, so I was saying we have these 1-on-1s and we have team polls and surveys, extra. The challenge being, let's say, like as you said, like a Nordic culture type of, company in Southeast Asia, is probably the fact that people are here a bit more used of a more top-down type of hierarchy, maybe sometimes a bit more of micromanaging, maybe not used to be asked too much, what they think about what we're doing, even that, within the project for sure, but like at the studio level, or hearing, for example, from us, here is how we're doing financially speaking, here are the partners that we're talking to, here are the projects that are coming up, and everyone is involved with this. This is kind of very different from what you would find in Southeast Asia. So what is hard is getting people to feel safe and open up. That's really, to me, that's really been the challenge. Again, the best way we've been working around this and getting people to open up is just to make sure that us, as people who are already part of the studio, we're creating that safe environment. Again, I was saying, like, we fail publicly, we share our learnings, we say when we don't know, we say when we need feedback, we ask people to give us feedback before we give them feedback. I want to know, how people think I could do better to support them, and then I can create a report with people to come back and share my own feedback. We're trying to be clear on, for example, the objectives that we have as individuals, as team. They're very public. It's a team effort. It's about the team. It's not about the individual. A failure is the failure of the team, not necessarily the failure of the individual. And we are making sure that, especially on the, founding team and steering group, that we don't give ourselves, a pass in terms of being, again, like, open, making the place safe. We keep ourselves as accountable as we can. We call each other out when we just don't do that. And I think it shows. I think it's something that is visible for people joining in the team who are maybe used to a different type of culture, and they are slowly warming up to that. But generally, when they join, we know still, because we went through, culture interview, that they are very likely to be comfortable with the culture that we have here. I think it's the main tool, essentially, that will ensure that, yeah, people can feel comfortable there.
Mhm. Yeah, and I like really like the blog you have on, I think, on Medium, about the learnings that team members share, like really in detail. So like it was very relevant content as well for the artists in our team. So I'll make sure to link it after also the podcast. But for example, this is great as well for people to share out there and live these values, of transparency.
Yes.
Like it's okay to make mistakes, share it, take the learnings from this.
But even just sharing knowledge is something that is not common
Mhm.
in the region. It's more common in Europe or in the US, where, for example, we have these calls, we talk to each other from time to time, and we discuss, like, here are the challenges I have, here's
Mhm.
what I'm how I've been approaching certain things. And I would say here in the region, it's a little bit harder to get people to feel, comfortable enough and safe enough and open up and be like, okay, let's talk about the way, I do things, and you're gonna maybe share with me the way you do things. I'm sure it can happen. I'm sure it can be done, but it is challenging here. Yeah.
Mhm. And that's the beauty of it. Like really, it's amazing as well the mix you have in the team and incorporating, these cultural challenges to create something unique. And as a result, as well, the games you have, Asia and West meeting together
Mm,
because they are real these differences of also of culture and respecting these differences and how to incorporate them.
absolutely.
And now I have also some questions more about your position as a co-founder, and maybe let's start first, like also with your routine and How do you handle, like your time, your day? What are your priorities at the moment? Even personal, between personal and business life. How do you manage your life priorities?
So my personal life priorities, I manage them very badly, I think. It's like it's really tough. I have a baby, and I think my personal life, I just spend as much time as I can with my baby, my wife. We go out, we go to the pool. I'm just trying to cut at. Okay, I'll be completely transparent. Usually stop whatever I'm doing at around 6:30, something like this. Spend as much time as I can before the baby sleeps, which is around eight something, and then after that I have to just go back and finish whatever I need to do. I'm working with people back in the US, so I often have calls very late at night or very early in the morning as well. Again, that's something that I have to do as a founder. The question, I guess, is more like how do I deal with the I guess the stress that it creates, and I'm not very good at doing this. Like when things are when I'm managing this well, I will do breathing exercises, I'll swim, I will take proper breaks, but that's I have to be honest. Like most of the time, I can't. Most of the time, I'm very just sort of consumed by the amount of things that I have to do. Unplugging entirely is difficult. Yeah, it's I think it's part of. I'm sure that can be done. Like there are people that are doing this really well. I'm not the best person at that. I tend to bring back a little bit my kind of concerns and issues back home. It takes me a bit of time before I can really like leave this at the door.
Yeah, and thanks for sharing really honestly, because that was really the point of the question. Where I think also, well, great for the people who can manage all of this, but it's just hard to have a
It is.
company, to be a founder, and personal and family life, and just do
Mm.
your best. And I think it's also very honest here to share that it's a challenge, and you do your best, and it's a process.
I think the pressure out there is this sense of responsibility and duty to do the right thing. Like a lot of people just place their trust in me and other people, to just do the right things. And so you have this in the back of your mind always, like, am I doing what is right? Am I doing enough? Am I doing what I should be doing? And that makes it's great. But that also makes it harder to just say like, yeah, just like I'm done. I'm just gonna have a break. Again, if I'm entirely honest about that, if I really want to do the right thing for my team, I should take these breaks. That's what is the right thing to do. We have to unplug, and we have to recharge ourselves. We have to be fresh so we can perform well. Yeah, I was saying I'm not very good at doing that, but working on it.
And what is to you the definition of success in life?
Definition of success in life. Maybe if I ask myself like every day, like how much regrets do I have, having the least amount of possible regrets is a success, whatever I'm doing. If I can say like, well, that's maybe I'm not, I don't know, happy with what I'm doing, but generally like I don't regret deeply, certain things that I should have said, should have done, as long as I don't have that sort of baggage, then I think I would feel successful.
Thank you. I love the answer. And also it has some philosophy to it, like I always like see this question and
Mm.
answers type that could be a lot around the business, or I don't know, like tangible things. But I think also like looking simply at on a daily basis, how do you feel when you end the day? I think it's also
Mhm.
a great inspiration. And as we are reaching also the end of our conversation today, I always have these three last questions I ask all my guests. So my first is, what are the next big steps for your studio that, of course, you can share more publicly? Yeah, let's begin with this.
So that's nice to talk about this. Again, I think it's about culture. It's we're growing the studio, and I think the next big step is how do we reach the next phase of the studio where culture is going to change. It has to change, but how do we make sure that it changes for the better? It's like that's the to me that's really the biggest challenge. Whatever we're going to do, the reason for that and why it's such a big step, like how do we go from 50 people to more and maintain a good culture, a healthy culture, is that no matter what we do as a
Mm.
studio, really no matter the number of projects, we will always as a studio, as a team, be successful if we have the right culture. It doesn't matter the strategy that we have, it doesn't matter the plans that we make, it doesn't matter, like as long as we have a great culture, people have ownership, people take good decisions, people are just essentially performing, as well as they can, because we have the right environment, then we'll be fine. That's my belief. So I would say like that's the next big step for me. How do we scale, maintain great culture?
Mhm.
And in terms of like maybe more technical terms, at the moment, so of course we continue hiring people. We continue growing the team. We have a free to play title that we're working on at the moment, and we are going back into publishing. So we published 2 free to play titles before Butter Royale. We're getting back into this. It has changed enormously in the past year. User acquisition, publishing in general, and so this is going to be a big step for us, like going back into publishing our games and maybe other studios' games as well.
Great, exciting news. And I think also scaling a culture is one of the biggest challenge of many companies, that from founding stage and to a big scale company, large company, it's a big challenge.
Definitely.
And second question, who's your role model in the industry or personally? Somebody that inspire you in your journey?
All right. So this is going to be funny and again, maybe not so surprising. I don't know. To me, right now in the industry, I think Simon, my co-founder, the CEO of the studio, is a big inspiration for me. Like he really helped me kind of. Okay, I should talk about myself. I have a tendency to be fairly visceral and fairly emotional, and I saw how one can be both fairly, again, like empathetic and creative, but also analytical and strategic. That's him, and he showed me that can exist. And so working with him really helped me kind of putting me on different tracks. And I think he's been a great influence within the industry. I don't think I was exposed to great leadership as well before in the previous companies I worked at. They were great managers, they were great people, but vision, leadership, strategy, not so much. I was not really exposed to that, so it really helped me. He reads a lot of books. He reads a lot. So, and that's also something that I kind of picked up with being in contact with him. So that would be that, Simon. And outside of the industry, I think right now there are people, many different people at different point of time. But I think right now I'm very challenged, I think, and enthusiastic about Shane Parrish from he's from Farnham Street, and he runs the Knowledge Project. And I think every time I listen to an episode, I feel like, whoa, new things to. He's a lot about like mental models and ways to think through, and I love that. So each episode has like very, very vastly different people
Yeah.
invited, but the thread here is how do they go about doing what they need to do? How do they find solutions? And for example, recently we had, I think, I can't remember his name. It's the CEO of Shake Shack talking about culture. That was really interesting. Culture in the F&B.
I love this podcast as well. Knowledge Project is awesome. And my last question, if you had one thing you wish to change in the industry right now, what would it be?
One thing. Well, I think it's probably diversity. I have to be honest. It's still like for me it's a big one because I just feel we're still like a bit late with this in the game industry. It's still very, like, to be honest, like it's very white male dominated, and I think we're just missing out on so much by not having more diverse teams. And yeah, that would be the main one. Maybe if I can, I will add a second one, which is more local, which is there is a stigma around the game industry in Southeast Asia. It's still like it's not a real job, and I would really like to see that change as well. That people see that as a career, they can earn a living, and yeah, it's a real work, and that would be nice if that could change that perception.
Well, thanks a lot, Ben, for all your wisdom, inspiration as well about culture. I took away a few things as well for me today. It was great to have you on the podcast, and we'll talk soon again.
Thanks a lot, Sophie. It was really nice. I really enjoyed participating. It was a great exercise for me to also like think more about what I do and why I do things. That was very useful. So thanks a lot for having me.
Great to hear. Take care. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Thanks for listening to this new episode of Raise and Play podcast. If you enjoyed the content and want to support what we're doing, rate and review the podcast, spread the word about it. If you'd like to contribute to the change too, reach out to me on LinkedIn for a collaboration. You'll find all the rest of the content on riseandplay.io, including my free masterclass on conscious leadership. Until the next time.